I now look to Lord Adonis to continue the case for the opposition.
Mr. President, I appear to be becoming a semi-permanent fixture at the Oxford Union, for which I apologise. However, last time I appeared, which was 2 weeks ago, I managed inadvertently to endorse a candidate for the presidency of the Union who was speaking alongside me, which is the reason why I did it, and he made an excellent speech, whereupon he promptly lost the election, and you, Mr. Librarian, got elected. So I was thinking that maybe the one thing I could do to ensure we stay in the European Union this evening would be to endorse my good friend Nigel Farage. That might ensure that his final takeover of the Conservative Party, which is well advanced at the moment, isn't fully consummated. However, Mr. Librarian, I understand from my researches on Wikipedia that you are something of an expert at impeachment. A practice which has fallen into some disuse in our national life. However, I have finally worked out the one thing that the Prime Minister, the real Prime Minister, could do to unite the nation. She could impeach Chris Grayling. If he was impeached, then that would indeed unite the country, since the one thing which the country is united on at the moment is that nothing that Chris Grayling touches ever works, which is why it's so wonderful that he continues to promote the Prime Minister's deal. Now the sentence for impeachment was never quite settled. I mean, it used to be being hung, drawn, caught, all kinds of terrible things used to happen in times past for impeachment. I'm told that now, I was told by President Tusk, so it must be true, that the sentence for impeachment now is to be sent to hell. Because do you remember he told us there was a special place in hell for those people who were responsible for Brexit. Now, can I let you into a secret? I'm an Anglican, so not only do I not believe in hell, I don't actually believe in anything to do with religion. But there may be some Catholics here who do believe in hell and who believe that that there is a place of fire and brimstone and so on. And I am told that many of the Brexiters are very, very eager to get there. In particular, one Dr. Liam Fox is there at the moment. He is trying to negotiate a trade deal with it as we speak, on the grounds he cannot get a trade deal with anywhere where there are the living, so one has to seek the dead. And of course it has very high spending power, so it has potential to do rather better than the ones he's succeeded on so far, which you may have noticed: the Faroe Islands, 1/2 of the population of the Isle of Wight, and other small places around the world. Now, it's a great honour to be debating against Rory Stewart this evening, and Henry, who made an excellent speech. In the spirit of bipartisanship, let me pay tribute to Rory and the excellent work he's doing on prison reform. The one thing I could not persuade Tony Blair to do was to lock up fewer people. Rory is a great expert on how to handle prison reform and penal reform, because he served for 5 years at Her Majesty's pleasure in Eton College, where I have reached a conclusion. I have a public policy suggestion for the Oxford Union this evening as to how we can resolve the Brexit catastrophe, which is if we abolished Eton College entirely, then there would be no Brexit, because almost everyone who is responsible for producing this catastrophe has come from that institution. Whether they're for it, whether they were David Cameron, who were against it, or whether it's Rory, who is now trying to sell something which he clearly doesn't believe in. And part of the reason for it, Mr. President, is that because the key to understanding Brexit is, though there is a social crisis taking place, and where I do agree with Henry, we need to address the social crisis, which of course is being entirely neglected at the moment. We do have a crisis of our public services, of unemployment and underemployment of young people who aren't lucky enough to go to university. We have manifold crises in this country. When you look for houses in due course, when you go to live in London, you will see the extent of the housing crisis. Though we have the social crisis, the key to understanding Brexit is that it was an elite project to manipulate the social crisis for its own end, particularly by people who are not going to have to pay the price of Brexit, which tends, of course, to be those who have done best out of life to start with. And whilst I believe, because I'm a politician too, that one can trade second-order issues in order to build coalitions and agreement and so on, and I said last time, Mr. President, when I was here, that in between my 2 elections to become a member of Oxford City Council, which was the high point of my elected career, I changed my position radically on the fate of the kebab vans of Oxford. Because one year I stood in the student ward where I was fully in favour of the kebab vans. I then stood in a residential ward the following year where I thought we needed a review of the kebab vans because they were causing such problems to the community life of the city. When it comes, though, Mr. President, to important matters which affect the life of the country, you should and ought to expect your politicians to be consistent, to stand for big and fundamental principles, and to lead. And leadership is at the roots of politics. Now, Rory, this is what Rory said before the last referendum. This is what Rory said to his constituents in his beautiful constituency in Cumbria. I have decided to vote to stay, Rory said. I have decided to vote to stay. I will do so because of things I care about in this constituency, such as financial support for small farmers and the environment. I will also do so because of things I care about nationally, such as keeping Scotland in the Union. And I will do so because of things I care about outside Britain, such as European security. I find it instinctively better, as a rule of thumb, to build things together rather than to break them apart. Now, Mr. President, can I say something to you this evening? I agree with all of that. I agree with keeping Scotland in the Union. I agree with European security and not playing fast and loose with our security and giving a free pass to President Putin. I believe, as a rule of thumb, in building things together rather than breaking them apart. And, Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, that is a reason for continuing to support Britain's membership of the European Union and to support a further referendum now that we can see the terms of our membership. And my proposition to you this evening, which is a fundamental proposition, is that 3 years ago, the British people, those who are allowed to vote, and I'm, by the way, in favour of votes for 16 and 17-year-olds, so is the overwhelming majority now of audiences I go to address. 3 years ago, the British people were asked to vote on 4 words: leave the European Union. Now, we have a 580-page withdrawal agreement. We have a 30-page political declaration. We have the cod piece and whatever else may come back in the days to come and further revisions. We can now see what the actual deal is on the table, and the right thing to do, now we can see the deal, is to do the thing that Jacob Rees-Mogg said we should do at the beginning, which is to hold a dual referendum, one on the principle of opening the negotiations, and the second on the actual proposition when you can see it. This is not a negation of democracy, this is the completion of democracy, and we need to see it take place in the country now. And you can understand immediately the reason why we need that when you consider the claims that were made 3 years ago, claims which were at the heart of the Leave campaign. I know that Henry thinks that some things he's responsible for and some things he's not, but it was his bit of the Leave campaign that was responsible for the bus. Do you remember the bus? £350 million a week for the NHS? Well, where's that gone? A £39 billion exit deal. The British people, no, I'm not giving away if Henry doesn't mind, we listen to him throughout. The British people should have their say on whether they want the 39 billion. Now, the trade deals. Do you remember all of those trade deals which were going to be ready for signature 1 minute past Brexit Day? No new trade deals will be ready for after Brexit Day, and most of the continuity trade deals are still not even completed at the moment. And did you hear the American ambassador on the Today programme yesterday? The chlorinated chicken, US food standards, that will be the price of your trade deal with the United States. Do you remember the 7 million Turks who are imminently invading the country the day after Brexit? Well, I don't know where they are. Maybe they're hiding in the Oxford Union somewhere and they've yet to be discovered. But the truth of the matter is that the huge scare that was put about on immigration was not correct either. Now we can see the facts. We've got the withdrawal agreement. We know what the political declaration is going to be. We should hold a referendum now on that. And the idea that by voting through this agreement now, you bring certainty is the biggest lie of all. If this agreement is voted through, we will have years and perhaps decades of uncertainty to come. The withdrawal agreement, which Rory is going to defend in a moment, it only lasts until the end of 2020. The whole of the future relationship with the European Union and the whole of our trading relationship is still to be negotiated. The reason why there has to be this thing called the backstop is precisely because we do not know what the arrangement is going to be and the agreement with the European Union in the future. So if you want to preserve democracy, if you want to preserve our jobs, if you want to preserve your common citizenship of the European Union, if you want to avoid a hard border in Ireland, if you want to preserve an institution, the European Union, which has worked and has produced the only 70 consecutive years of peace in the history of this continent, then the right thing to do is to reject this deal, to support another referendum, and to campaign to stay in the European Union.